Cord. And honestly, I wasn't sure what he was wanting. And then I got to looking at it too, it being Father's Day, so I was trying to kind of combine the two if we could. I reckon I know most everybody. There's some folks I don't know. Give you a little bit of background what's kind of happened. A year ago, in 6 days, I was a DCH and ICU. And working full time, thought I was healthy, Scared the girl to death, blood pressure bottomed out, and I lost a lot of blood. Well, Jennifer Palmer does an EGD. Lo and behold, I got cancer in my stomach. So I started chemotherapy. I had 1 round of chemo. I had surgery. And I can remember it is October 4th because it's the day after mine and my wife's anniversary. Went to UAB and they took my stomach out. They got my small intestine hooked to my esophagus. Now I got a spot about half size of your fist. So I eat pretty regular, I just can't eat a lot at one time. Well, it rocked on, got done with the surgery, went back to work, and had another round of chemotherapy and radiation. The idea was if we missed anything, we would get it. First PET scan was clear, had another PET scan, end of February, 1st of March. Had 2 little old spots back here around my kidneys. Dr. Cruz said, it ain't cancer, it's in the wrong place. It's okay. Well, it was. And so it's in my abdominal wall now, and it's Dr. Bostic, my oncologist, she said, you've got about a year and a half at best. It's all right. Well, I said all that to say this. First, I want to thank y'all for praying for me. Y'all don't know how good the Lord's been to me. He gave me a year. Now, if he sees fit to give me another year, I'm tickled to death. If he sees fit to touch me, even better. But there's a lot of folks, and I tell this most to everybody, we get talking about it, and it's in my, let me back up just a little bit. December, my wife started having back problems. Well, she had chest x-ray, got a spot on her lungs. She diagnosed with lung cancer. And one of the girls at work tells her husband, he said, dear Lord, can't the poor man catch a break? And at that time, I was clear. I had finished my chemotherapy, got over my surgery. Well, she had surgery at St. Vincent's, and she doesn't have to have any treatment. She's clear. But the Lord worked it out where we weren't both laid up at the same time. And it caught her so early that she'll probably never have any trouble out of it at all. So there again, how he's looked after us and blessed us. Well, I said all that to say this. We're going to be in the book of Job, most of it today. I've always been interested in Job as a character. And I don't know if this was God preparing me later for what I was going to deal with or not. But, like I say, the Lord has blessed. Now, this past week, I ain't going to lie, it wasn't too sporty. I've had a lot of trouble with nausea. But this is the first time I've really had trouble since I've been diagnosed. I have a little bit of abdominal pain. I take Tylenol maybe once a day, once every other day, So I'm an RN, and I worked the cancer floor at DCH for 15 years. I've seen a bunch of folks come in dealing a lot worse problems than what I'm dealing with, So how he's looked after me and looked after my family, and how y'all are blessed. But Job always interested me. And in Job chapter 1, we're going to kind of hit through the book. We're just going to hit some high spots. But in Job chapter 1, verse 1, it says, there was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job. And that man was perfect and upright, and one that feared God and eschewed evil. And they were born unto him 7 sons and 3 daughters. His substance also was 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 she-asses, and a very great household. So this man was the greatest of all the men of the east. And his sons went and feasted in their houses, every one his day, and sent and called for their 3 sisters to eat and to drink with them. And it was so. When the days of their feasting were gone about, then Job sent and sanctified them, and rose up early in the morning, and offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, it may be that my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. Thus did Job continually. And it says, now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. And the Lord said unto Satan, whence comest thou? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And the Lord said unto Satan, hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and an upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, doth Job fear God for naught? Hast not thou made a hedge about him, and about his house, and about all that he hath on every side? Thou hast blessed the work of his hands, and his substance is increased in the land. But put forth thine hand now, and touch all that he hath, and he will curse thee to thy face. And the Lord said unto Satan, behold, all that he hath is in thy power. Only upon himself put not forth thine hand. So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord. Now the book of Job was the first book written in the Bible. Genesis covers older material. Of course, it's starting at the creation. But this, they say, was written roughly 400 years before the law. They also believe that Job was a great-great-grandson of Abraham. That he was out of Jacob, Ishkar, is that how you pronounce his name? One of the Jacob's sons out of Leah. And God called him, said he was perfect and upright. That ain't what Job said. That ain't what his wife said. That ain't what his preacher said. That ain't what I said. That's what God said. Amen. So if God said it, I believe he's perfect and upright. Now, does that mean he was sinless? No. There ain't been one sinless, and that's Christ. Amen. But he was perfect. So now, where the distinction is, I don't know. But he was perfect and he was upright. So I got some things. I finally got this stuff alliterated. I've been around Brother Terry, and Brother Ken, Brother Jimmy, and all of them so long. You know, you got to have your points alliterated. You know. And I can really do good, and there'll be one. I'm like, where in the world am I going to find a word that starts with this letter? You know. But I got it. There's some things I need to reconcile in my mind. It says, the Lord said unto Satan, behold, all that he hath is in thy power. Upon himself put not forth thine hand. So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord. And a little later, now, his children are killed. Said a cloud come up. He lost everything he had. He lost his family. He lost his home. And I said he lost everything. I'm fixed to back up on that in just a minute. But he lost his family. He lost his home. He lost his living. Still didn't cuss God. Yeah. Still didn't charge him foolishly. Yeah. Satan comes back and said in chapter 2, verse 6, and the Lord said unto Satan, behold, he is in thy hand, but save his life. You can do anything but kill him. Took his health. He's sitting in a garbage dump, homeless, got a broken piece of pottery. He's got boils from the top of his head to the bottom of his feet. He's sitting back there scratching and clawing. When I was diagnosed with cancer, I had no symptoms at all. I had none of the risk factors for gastric cancer. I didn't have a family history, you know. And I heard people say, well, you're a good man. Why? Why not? I ain't none good. Ain't none of us good. That's right. They ain't the one good. As Brother Bob Weldon said, I believe it was him I heard say it, said if I got what I deserved, I'd be in hell with my back broke. Yeah, that's right. So, but one of the things that's hard for me to reconcile is it's almost like God is being a little petty here. he's kind of playing. Now, when I was diagnosed, the second night with Dr. Palmer, she said, we found something. I said, that's good. She said, no, it ain't good. And about 3 days later before we got the pathology report. But Melinda was down there with me, and she had finally gone to sleep. And me and the Lord got to talking. Now, I don't know how y'all pray. Now, when I pray at the church, I get called on at church, I pray one way. Now, when I'm at the house by myself, it's just like me and y'all talking. You know. And I'm going to be honest, these days it's easier to say this than others. But I told the Lord, I said, all I know is it's going to be right. I may not like it. I may not understand it, but it'll be right. Right here, I don't believe God's petty. I don't understand why he did what he did to Job. All I know is it's right.
It's right.
Now, Satan can't do nothing God don't allow. So God had to tell him, he had to give him permission. But when I said he lost it all, that ain't really true. He didn't lose it all. Now, me and Dad got talking about this last night. Now, this is my theology. I can't really prove it. Most everybody I read in the commentaries, if they even talked about it, they sure didn't agree with me. He didn't lose his wife. Now, y'all know what his wife said. Over in chapter 2, verse 9. Now, this is after he's lost his health. He said, then said his wife unto him, thou dost still retain thine integrity? Curse God and die. Now, Augustine said that she was the devil's accomplice. Calvin called her a diabolical fury. Don't know. I'm going to say one thing. Job lost his children. His wife lost her children. Job's homeless. She's homeless. They ain't got a pot to enter or window to throw it out of. She's in the same boat he's in. She's got the same grief. Me personally, I believe she couldn't stand to see her husband suffer. And I believe that in compassion, she was saying, it's all right. It's okay. Because she's signing her death warrant. She ain't got no kids to take care of her. If Job's dead, she's dead. There ain't no welfare system. And I believe she knew that. And it's hard to tell to me when I'm reading, because in verse 10 he said, but he said unto her, thou speakest as one of the foolish women speaketh. He didn't say, if somebody says something, and he kind of, me and Chuck, known each other for years, we'd be cutting up, you can say something, well, now that's just plumb crazy, just joking back and forth. But then it's, now you, Jack, I'm crazy. It's how you say it. When he said, thou speakest as one of the foolish women, I think what he's saying is, it's all right. Because he said, what? Shall we receive good at the hand of God, and shall not receive evil? And all this did not Job say with his lips. So God let him have his wife. That same wife that told him, curse God and die, she didn't leave him.
Yeah. Right.
She didn't divorce him. Those of us that are married, we said something to the effect, for richer, for poorer, for better, for worse, in sickness and health, to death do us part. She didn't get up and say, no, I'm gone, I ain't handling this. She's right there with him.
Right.
Spoiler alert, we get chapter 42, God restores Job, gives him 10 more kids. Who do you think gave him them 10 kids?
Right.
God gave them, but she buried them. And I'm going to tell you something else, and if y'all find it, please let me know. But I can't find nowhere in here that God condemned her for what she said.
Right.
And if God don't condemn her, I darn sure ain't about to start.
Right.
Next thing Job didn't lose, he didn't lose his friends. Now, we give his friends a hard time. And I'll give them a harder time than I'll give his wife, because God did condemn them. He told them at the end, said, you better get Job to pray for you.
Right.
For what you done, accused him of. But how many of us sitting here have got friends that would come to where we was at in our grief and sit for 7 days in the dust with us and not say a word? I ain't got no. Me and Chuck can't sit 5 minutes without talking to each other and saying something. Most of it don't make no sense. Me and Dad, well, this hard he'll go to sleep now, so we'll sit there quietly then. But God let him have his wife. He let him have his friends, such as they are. And he had his integrity. God himself said, still he holdeth fast his integrity. That means a lot to me as I get closer. These lessons, y'all know these as well as I do. But since my diagnosis, you got an academic knowledge. And then you got an experimental knowledge. That's what I'm learning. You know in your mind and you read this and well, yes, this and this. But it's when it gets tough, that's when you learn your lessons. Second thing is redeem the time. This gentleman right here, I've heard him say it 2 or 3 times about time. Now there's a saying, and I tried to find it, and I don't know the quote good enough to look it up. But it was something to the effect that we mourn the 3 months we've got, but we ignore the tomorrow that may never get here. Again, God's given me a year to be with my family, to be with y'all, to watch my daughter get a year older. But am I redeeming the time? You know, if there's an advantage to having cancer, it's time. If there's something that ain't right between me and God, if there's something ain't right between me and my family, I got time to make it right. I got time to fix it. There's many a man got up of a morning. Last words out of his mouth was an argument with his wife, said something short, never made it to work. Never got to take them words back. Heart attack, wreck, you name it. We've got time. James chapter 4, verse 14, real familiar verse, talks about life's like a vapor. Now that's a warning, because don't none of us know tomorrow's Father's Day. But don't none of us know we're going to make it to Father's Day. That year that they think they're giving me, I may have that year. I may not have 2 foggy mornings. I may have 5 years. You never know. But let's redeem the time.
Yeah.
But that's a warning, but it's a promise. The suffering we got down here, we get home, ain't gonna amount to a hill of beans.
Right. That's right. That's right.
If you saved, them good meetings, when it gets on, and we out there singing My Heavenly Home, and the tears are running, and we think, Lord, it ain't gonna get no gooder. Wait till we get to our heavenly home.
That's right.
But you folks, and I say that, let me back up. I don't know y'all, some of y'all. But if there's somebody here that ain't right, you think you're having hard times now, you're going to be looking back on these days as heaven on earth, because that you think you're suffering now. You don't know what suffering is. So let's redeem the time. Ready or not, here we come.
Yeah.
Am I prepared to meet my God? Now, I'm going to be honest. I believe in eternal security. I believe it's a biblical doctrine. But when they tell you got cancer, now I don't know about y'all. When I was in school, I wouldn't study to the night before. If I had a test or I'd wait till the last minute. Well, you get told you got cancer, you get checked up. All right, now let's make sure this is right. You know, let's get into 1 John. You know you passed from death unto life. Well, what is the fruits of the Spirit? Do I show the fruit of the Spirit? Is your families ready? Are they ready? Now, 1 Timothy, I believe chapter 5, verse 8, says, any man to provide enough for his own house. Well, I could quote it, and I just went blank. Anyway, he's denied the faith and he's worse than an infidel. Now, I always look at that as a physical preparation. You prepare them financially, physically. But it's a spiritual preparation. Y'all got gardens. Brother Allen Gullett preached on the parable of the sower, this camp meeting. That seed's good seed. If you don't get a good stand, you can't blame the seed.
That's right. That's right.
Was the soil prepared? When you prepared it, did you water it? Did you hoe it? Now, I ain't never hoed to suit my daddy. And I don't think my dad's ever hoed to suit his daddy. You know. But your kids and your family. Now see, and there again, I've had it easy. When I got my wife, Ephesians chapter 5, it talks about presenting her. I didn't have to do nothing. Mr. Jimmy and Miss Linda done took care of that. She's a lot better than I am. I didn't have to think you do anything to get her ready, you know. But has your children got deep roots in the Scripture and in faith? Because you ain't going to be there. You may still be alive and walking, but you may not be there when they go through a trial. And they got to be grounded. They got to be rooted in the Word. Yeah. Deuteronomy chapter 6, one of my favorite chapters, says when you get up, when you walk in the way, when you lay down, teach them. Teach them. It gets dry and it ain't rained. They got to have deep roots because they got to get into that groundwater. Yeah. That storm comes up, as old Virgil used to say, them Mississippi death clouds come in, they got to have stronger roots. Because that wind's going to knock them down.
Oh, yeah.
Redeem the time. Prepare your family. Prepare yourself. What do we rest in? What do we put our trust in? Now, in 1994, spring of 94, I was working for an outfit called Brown Wood Preserver in Louisville, Kentucky. Mr. Lowell Stanley come out one morning. He said, I want to see all the men in the office at 10:30. I thought, this ain't good. This ain't, when he wants to see everybody, it's bad. I went in, he said, I'm shutting the mill down. He said, but I want to speak to every one of you individually. He said, I can't keep everybody, but he said, there's some I want to keep. He said, if I can't keep you, I've got another company that'll hire anybody I send over there. So he called me in the office. Now, of course, I was single. And then, you know, he said, John, he said, I don't want to lose you. He said, would you be willing to move to Alabama? I had no desire to go to Alabama. I ain't got nothing against Alabama, but I mean, you know, it wasn't on my bucket list, you know. I said, well, if it means keeping my job, I'll go to Alabama. 1997, Donald Watson, I'm working at the pole yard, same company. He said, got somebody I want you to meet. Mr. Jimmy Rogers got a daughter, Melinda. That's been 27 years ago, this fall. If the Lord tarries, he sees fit this October, we'll be married 26 years. Now I look back, and I see where God, if Brother Terry's favorite word, providence, is lining things up to get me to Alabama. I never would have met y'all. Now, y'all may have wished y'all never met me, you know. But I count it a joy to have met y'all and called y'all my friends and my brothers. Had I told Mr. Stanley, I ain't going to Alabama, they a bunch of yahoos, you know. Now, wouldn't have happened. But it gets me down here. I got a good family. I got a wonderful wife. I got one child in glory waiting on me. I got one down here. God was looking ahead. He said, I got to get him to Alabama. I got to get him to Brownville, which Brownville don't exist no more. I drove past his church 4 days in a row marking timber up above Flatwoods. Drove past it 4 days in a row. I said, boy, it's a good looking church. I ain't driving over here. I ain't driving 30 miles over here. How long I've been driving over here? 27 years. You know, and I'll be honest, I come through them doors, if me and Melinda not worked out, I'd still be here. There was a presence when I come through them doors. I got no regrets on that. Now this is where we get experimental faith versus blind faith. We don't work on blind faith. Hebrews talks about the faith as hope for things unseen. But this is experimental faith. Because I can look back and I can see how God was working. Right now, I can't. All I know is I'm dealing with cancer. But I do know that the same God that worked it for me to be down here in His infinite wisdom is working this to my good. One of my favorite parts in the book of Job, Job chapter 19. Now, when we read this, I want you to remember, this is 400 years before the law. He is probably, well, like I say, he's Jacob's grandson. So that's the time frame we're looking at. But it says in chapter 19, verse 25, it says, "For I know that my Redeemer liveth, and He shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. And though after my skin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh shall I see God, whom I shall see for myself, and mine eyes shall behold, and not another, though my reins be consumed within me." He had an experimental faith that he put his faith in. He knew who his Redeemer was.
Yeah, amen.
This is the first time that I can find in the English or the Hebrew that the word Redeemer is mentioned in the Bible. This is before Moses and the law. What's he know about the Redeemer? What's he know about the resurrection? What's he know about the second coming? It's all right here.
Yes, that's right.
It's the redeeming work of Christ our Savior. It went to the cross so that we didn't have to go to hell. The resurrection of our bodies and Him coming again to rule. This is 400 years before the law was wrote. Now I ain't lying, that blows my mind, which it don't take much to do that. But that blows my mind. But then you look at His heritage. Who's His daddy? Who's His granddaddy? Who's His great-granddaddy? They instilled the word, I believe, in Job. Brother Terry's made this statement many times. He said that he never remembers not going to church. I'm the same way. I grew up, my first memories were Brownsburg Baptist. I asked Dad the other day if he remembers. He said he didn't. But I'll never forget it. I was raised to respect God's house. Now, this building is sanctified. It's set apart. Now, it ain't holy in the sense, we're not making idols, but it's set apart.
Yes.
Now, Mom and Dad, when I was, that's 77, thereabouts, when they started cleaning the church. And, of course, Dad worked at the plant. They were cleaning, and me and Brett Brazier, that was the preacher's boy, was playing basketball outside. And I honestly didn't think. I didn't mean nothing by it. But I didn't have a shirt on. And in the old part of the building, on our house side of the church, when you went in the door, there was a ladies' restroom, and then there was the church office, and there was a water fountain right there. It wasn't much further from here as that and right there. I walked in that building, didn't have a shirt on. Dad was rolling up a 100-foot extension cord. I don't have to imagine in my mind what Christ looked like when He turned the money changers' tables over in the temple. That's the closest I've ever heard my dad speak in tongues. Now, he didn't whoop me, but he had that extension cord, and I didn't get a drink of water. I was outside. But He raised me to respect the building. They raised me to fear God. That's where we rest. I promise I'm almost done.
No, you're doing good.
And then we rejoice. And they look at you, how can you rejoice? Job chapter 1 verse 20 said, "Then Job arose and rent his mantle, shaved his head, and he fell down upon the ground and worshipped, and said, Naked I came out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. Thither the Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And all this Job sinned not, nor charge God foolishly. I tell you how we rejoice. He gave us a promise. He said, I'll never leave you nor forsake you.
Amen. Yes.
He ain't left me. He ain't forsaken me. Those of y'all that have prayed for me to be healed, I got news for you. Your prayers are answered. It may not be on this side. It may be when I go home. But I will be healed.
Right.
There'll be a time, those of us that are saved, we're going to get our glorified bodies. That's how we rejoice when times is hard.
Yeah.
Brother Terry was preaching Psalm 73 years ago. We was in the old building. Talking about my foot had well nigh slipped. I was cold. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't listening to a word that man was saying. I sat there where I always sit, back pew on the corner. Me going to look scriptural. I'm reading scripture. That same chapter he's preaching of ain't got nothing to do with the sermon. I don't remember what the sermon is, no offense. But in Psalm chapter 73 verse 21 it says, thus my heart was grieved and I was pricked in my reins. So foolish was I and ignorant. I was as a beast before thee. Nevertheless I am continually with thee. Thou hast holden me by my right hand. Thou shalt guide me with thy counsel, and afterward receive me to glory. Whom have I in heaven but thee? And there's none upon the earth that I desire besides thee.
Yes.
Now that's something I understood in an academic sense back then, but it's become practical to me now. And finally, run well. Finish well.
Yes.
That scares me more than anything else. I want to talk about two different men. One was Lot, one was Job. Both of them, if Papa used to say, had enough money to burn a wet mule. Lot, Abraham's nephew, I believe he started well. But when him and Abraham split, he said he looked upon the well-watered plains. He pitched his tent toward. Next thing you know, he's sitting at the gate.
Yeah.
He's one of the big wheels. And then when the angels come to get him and his family out, he makes a statement that blows my mind again. He says, brethren, how in the wild, wild west can you call them Yahu's brethren? That insignificant act years ago that he made over time. If it wasn't for Peter, I've heard other people say this, what Peter wrote, if it wasn't for him, I don't know what I would have thought Lot was saved. It said it vexed his righteous soul, so I'm assuming it was. But you talk about somebody lost it all. He lost his family. He lost his living. Last account we got of him until you get into the New Testament, when it talks about the days of Lot, he's in a cave with two daughters that have tricked him and laid with him to have children and to get the Ammonites and the Moabites out of him. More than that, he lost his integrity. He lost his witness. Job didn't do that. How many times y'all watch somebody it's Saturday, but Alabama ain't playing ball together when the air conditioning. So you be watching the ball game, and you get a fella, he's running for a touchdown, and gets showboat. He's watching himself up on the Jumbotron or whatever. He's on the 5-yard line. He spikes the ball. He didn't even make it into the end zone. He forgot where he was.
Yeah.
Don't be that fella on the 5-yard line spiking the ball.
Yeah.
Finish well.
Yeah.
Paul said in 2 Timothy, he says, for I am now ready to be offered. My time of departure is at hand. I have fought a good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give me at that day, and not to me only, but unto all them also that love his appearing. Those articles. I have fought a good fight. They multiple fights. I've had some good ones, I've had some bad ones. I have finished my course. That's my course. That ain't Brother Terry's. That ain't my dad's. That ain't Mr. Jimmy's. but I'm finishing my course. But I hope I can say I have kept the faith.
Yes.
Not a faith, but the faith.
Yeah.
With the cancer, what scares me most than anything else, all things being equal, if the Lord tarries, it'll go to my liver, my bones, and my brain. My wife said, she said, I'm scared you're going to have pain. I said, well, you know, it's possible. I said, but what pain I've had, I've not really had any issue. You know, I'm not having to take medicine yet. What scares me if it goes to my mind and I show out and I bring reproach on my family, my church, or my God. That's what scares me more than anything else. And I want to exhort y'all, as it says in the book of Hebrews. Another thing in Hebrews that I found the other day, and I read it, it just never struck me. But in Hebrews chapter 11, you got the Hall of Fame of Faith. Verse 16 says, but now they desire a better country, that is, an heavenly. Wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he hath prepared for them a city. I don't want God to be ashamed to be my God. How many times have you seen somebody on TV say, please don't tell them you're from Alabama. Please don't tell them you're from Fayette. Please don't, tell them you're Baptist, because you'd be ashamed of the way they was acting.
Yeah.
Finish well.
Yes.
Job 42 verse 17, so Job died being of old and full of days. He lived 140 years after all this over with. God gave him his 10 more children. He doubled everything he had. There's only 4 times that phrase being old and full of days is mentioned. One's Job, one's Isaac, one's David, and one is Jehoiada. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. He was the high priest that hid, was it Joash? Well, the little one, the little boy, is king. That was only 4 men that got mentioned. That's pretty good company.
Yes.
In conclusion, y'all heard, those members of the church, y'all heard this other Wednesday night. One of my welding instructors, he was in the service. He was in Vietnam. He was alert. And he went into the Ranger Regiment. He was airborne. And we had some boys that were going into the service. And he was helping them get ready for basic. This is what to look for. And of course, the rest of us was around. We were catching it just by osmosis, And one thing always struck me was General Standing Order number 1. I will guard everything within the limits of my post and quit my post only when properly relieved. If you're sitting here right now and you're drawing breath, you ain't been properly relieved. There's a reason why you're here.
Yeah.
Now, are you lost? You need to make things right. Are you saved? You need to make things right. That's between you and God. I ain't got nothing to do with it. I ain't throwing this at nobody. I promise. But you here, he's got you here for a reason. Now, when your mission is done, you will be properly relieved and you'll go to the house. There, during the War of Northern Independence, there was a man, John Singleton Mosby. They called him the Gray Ghost. He was a partisan ranger in Virginia up around the Shenandoah Valley, up around Winchester. Now, I don't think he holds a candle to Nathan Bedford Forrest, but that's just my opinion, and if y'all want to disagree and be wrong, that's y'all's business. But he had what was called Mosby's Confederacy. It was actually behind Union lines, but they didn't control it. The reason they didn't control it was because Mosby and his cavalry regiment took care of it. They did their raids at night. They stole cattle, they captured folks. The men was there, but they couldn't control it. Those of us that are saved, we're behind enemy lines. We're in a pagan world. But the world don't control it. Where's your Mosby's Confederacy? Brother Terry's told us, and I don't remember who the pastor was, but said he walked on a piece of property barefooted praying, and the Lord gave it to him to build a church. If you walked around your family barefoot and praying, this is my confederacy. This is my ground. If you walked around your church, if you walked around your preacher's house, I claim this. Now, time. I don't know. I ain't trying to talk nothing up. I promise. Tomorrow's Father's Day. But we don't know it's going to be here. If there's somebody you need to go to set things right, maybe you just won't speak to them. Hug their neck. Ain't no better time while the Spirit's dealing, if He's dealing with you. Now don't do it because I said do it. But if the Lord is laid on your heart, or if you looked at it and you said, I don't know if I'm ready. Brother Terry, Brother Larry, Brother Jimmy, Brother Ken, Brother Jim Hall, these men and man be more than happy to slip off in one of these rooms. Get this set. Get this settled. Don't go home, I don't know. Don't you go out that door and you don't know. If you want to do one thing for me, that's what you can do for me. Pray for my family. Make sure things are right between you and God. Boy, you got time. But finish well. All right, that's all I got.